We are not aiming to go head on with traditional lithium-ion batteries, and we're really trying to develop a new category of batteries for new applications. There are many markets actually looking for a very thin integratable battery into applications like labels, tracking labels. You can think of it similar like an Apple AirTag, but just in a mass product for tracking all kind of products in a simple label format. And here there is simply no battery which can be as thin and as integrated into that.
I'm most excited about the whole medical devices category, where currently batteries and size is a huge constraint factor on a very more concrete level. And on a high level, I'm excited about because in 5 or maybe 10 years, hardware products won't brag about battery life. They will just actually make the battery disappear and it will focus on functionality and what it can do.
The whole industry is looking for a fully solid state battery, and most of them actually still use a bit of liquid inside of their cells. So this was one of the first realization where we said, okay, can we not make this into a product itself rather than only a model system?
Europe has been able to showcase its industrial ability historically, and still today, Europe is very capable of achieving its own independence, quote unquote, in this market.
Welcome back, everyone, to the European VC podcast. We've spent decades improving batteries, more capacity, lower cost, slightly faster charging. But if you zoom out, most of those improvements have been nothing less than incremental. And that's starting to look like the wrong question to ask. Because the real constraint today is just how much energy you can store. It's where you can put it. It's how safe it is. And it is what it actually enables. In other words, batteries aren't just a component. They define what products can exist. And that's what today is all about. Joining me, Michael Brehm, managing partner at Redstone, investing in deep tech industrial transformation across Europe for decades now. We also have Mohamed Foulser, partner at Redstone. I will be referring to him as Mo, focused on identifying exactly these kinds of inflection points in hardware and energy systems. And finally, Moritz H, founder of BTRY, BTRY, for those that are Googling this, building ultra-thin solid-state batteries that could fundamentally reshape how devices are designed. Let's start with this shift.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Michael, we tend to think of batteries as a solved problem. Why is that wrong today?
Well, Andreas, first of all, thanks a lot for having us on a EUVC podcast. Great being here. And it's absolutely not a solved problem. And we always tend to think from the customer perspective. And like nobody says, oh, I love waiting for 2 weeks instead of instant delivery for a package. Or I want my iPhone or my phone to be like the size of a suitcase. Today's batteries force quietly exactly that on us. We pretend they're soft because our phones last a day, but if you zoom out, exactly size, safety, heat are strangling the next wave of innovation. And the battery is ultimately still the grumpy bouncer at the innovation club's entry and keeps the really cool stuff and the really cool ideas outside.
Why is that, Michael? What use case would you say that is like most present to everyone that we're unable to unlock because batteries function as that bouncer?
Well, it's like we call it the form factor tyranny. So battery still dictates entire devices. You want a coin-sized sensor, too bad, because ultimately it needs to be 3 times thicker. There's thermal limits. Batteries heat up fast, so devices throttle down or shut down completely. And then ultimately also safety restrictions, push for higher density, ultra fast charging, and safety systems slam the door. We're actually stuck in a 2018 performance in a 2030 world.
And Mo, let me ask you from an investment perspective, where do you see it breaking? What is it that's keeping us from getting the battery innovation that we need?
I think maybe to qualify, given that also batteries on the call here, it's not necessarily what the market has not done, rather it's what the market is not looking at. And in this particular case, with respect to the conversation today, it's that the market really doesn't understand the relevance of sub 1 ampere hour batteries. So really, when you look at it from that perspective, it's not a question of what's breaking, rather how does a battery fit into the application? And given exactly what Michael was saying, with respect to how the battery works currently with like lithium ion, and he alluded that with sort of the stability in high temperature high temperature environments with certain devices. If we come to the other aspect of sort of what you wear, I don't know who's wearing a wearable or has a smart card in their wallet or so. It's typically you'll have a form factor that's dictated by the battery. And again, Michael did allude this. So in terms of what's breaking, I would say that we need to have an understanding that batteries are very important to the final product, and to enable that application and or product, a battery must be able to fit into that.
So from a battery perspective, and I think here I should look at you, Moritz, from battery, what is it that we're lacking from an innovation capability perspective? What are the breakthroughs that are missing for us to be able to let loose a new wave of innovation in form factor and in use cases?
Yes, I think one thing which is often misunderstood that customers look for batteries which enable 10 times more runway. This is not the case. We have many discussions with the market, and usually they exactly look what Mo and Michael already mentioned, for more high temperature stability, form factor differences, really fit in the energy they need in their applications. One specific use case I can also point out here is, for example, industrial sensors. There are many factories which ideally would like to place sensors all around it, that you know exactly at each time of the moment, each time of the day, how the factory is operating, how the machines are operating, how hot is the pipe, what is the frequency of the machine, to really tune the processes and then make the factory more efficient. Today, this is simply not possible because of temperature stability. And if we now would have a battery that can operate at these high temperatures, we can all of a suddenly make the factory smart, and thereby also optimize the use case itself.
So this is, of course, sensors in harsh environments. It's ultra thin devices. It's that which is really what's limiting us. Then I think this is the perfect segue to ask you, Moritz, what are you building with battery? Because then we can kind of unpack it from there and build out the whole battery industry with you as the core foundation of it.
Mm-hmm. So what we are building at Battery is or why we do what we do at Battery, is we see that batteries are often limiting devices, and often applications are built around the battery. And we would rather have the battery be an integrated part of applications. So we really want to enable new applications with a battery. We see the constraints of today's batteries, what kind of effect it has on applications, and we would like that the battery is seen as an enabling component.
And what's the innovation here? Let me ask you, like, what's the technical breakthrough that you're making?
Yes. So the technical breakthrough is we don't iterate on today's batteries. We really rethink how the battery is built. We're using very different manufacturing methods to build the battery. So this is a manufacturing method which already scaled and established in other industries like flexible solar cells or computer chips. And we use this to build the battery. And this really allows us to build the battery very differently from ground up.
Mo, can you explain to us why you got super excited about this?
Yeah, I think sort of alluding to what Moritz said, it's really, in the battery world, there's so much chemistry that has happened in the battery world. And I don't pretend to be a battery expert, but given what we've looked at and what we've engaged with, is that there was a time where chemistry was the innovation. And that still happens, but rather now the architecture and the manufacturing of these batteries, especially given it from a European context, is what's driving innovation. And this is why we love what Battery is doing. So what they've been able to unlock is effectively how can you structure a battery today in a form factor that people can have a malleable play with, right? How effectively it's ultra thin and flexible. And with the most important part being that in a European context, what Moritz has been able to achieve is showcase that they can achieve scale with their manufacturing processes with a battery that is ultimately a European product.
Just to double click on this, what you're saying is that that battery are building, that Moritz is building and producing for customers today, is in fact so thin that it's like a foldable foil.
I mean, I wish he had brought an example of it, and just to see this.
He's showing it now to
Are you
everyone.
see? All right,
Yeah.
Great. So it is that thin. It's foldable, it's flexible, it is truly amazing. And if you just think about the potential, just what can a thin battery do? I mean, I probably am skipping to a question that you might have, but I think about it from like apparel, like in the sense of like what you wear. Imagine having clothes that are smart. Imagine having footwear that is smart. Like imagine having McDonald's that's understanding the consumer element of how they're integrating their purchases with how they're working with supply of, I don't know, Coca-Cola for the case of argument in dispensaries. So you could use this for almost anything that has not been achieved at present. And it's such an opportunity for us in terms of excitement of an investment that, of course, also BTRY is being led by wonderful people like Moritz. And I also have to mention his co-founder, Abby. So it was a very clear point for us to put some money behind them and hope to help them scale and achieve their ambitions.
Michael, maybe I can pull you in here because I think as was evident to many when we started the podcast here, you know this space super well. You know the industrial base in Europe super well. Can you talk a bit to the customers that you already know that have been waiting for this and why you fell in love with the market?
So the interesting case here is there are a few obvious customer for some small devices, etc. But it's really, I would say, a really big bet on creating a completely new category for devices and for products that in today's world don't exist. So you should think of it like a little bit like the Gorilla Glass when the iPhone came out that Steve Jobs found. And I think the magic of today's smart phones comes from this like hard, unbreakable glass. And that was what it enabled the whole category ultimately. Without the Gorilla Glass, probably smartphones wouldn't be as successful as they are. And that's what BTRY is doing. They create like the thinnest battery in the world that's foldable, etc. So it opens up the kind of space for completely new things like storage. Like founders now can purely design for functionality, elegant form, seamless experience. And you take battery and energy ultimately out of the equation. And that's really radical. And that's what we love. And I think people also underestimating how contrarian Redstone as a firm invests. Like in this case, when everybody is looking for battery packs for EVs or large battery packs for grid storage, we went exactly the opposite way. We said, what could open up completely new categories in the tiny space, in the nearly invisible space? And that goes back to a long history. 2021, when everyone was piling in consumer apps, we went all in deep tech. When everybody was chasing flying drones, we backed underwater drones and an airship company, both now world market leaders in their fields. And that's exactly where we see battery coming in.
Can you talk about your strategy, Moritz? How are you going to market? How are you collaborating with the industry giants that we have in Europe as an example? I imagine that many of them are an important part to your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's an important aspect on how we do this. As a battery, we can enable many different technologies, but it's really important to find the right one where early on we can solve a pain point which is there with customers. And so this we found with the thinnest, that there are many markets actually looking for very thin integratable battery into applications like labels, tracking labels. You can think of it similar like an Apple AirTag, but just in a mass product for tracking all kind of products in a simple label format. And here there is simply no battery which can be as thin and as integrated into that. And this is really now a market which enable us to bring the first products into the market, work together with customers to design a much more efficient product, and then allow us to scale the technology to a right size. And from that point on, we hope to enable much more applications in embedded, especially embedded devices. but also medical devices and wearables ultimately.
Moritz, you came out of ETH Zürich. You were first backed by high-tech Gründer funds, and Michael and the team at Redstone came in the next round. I'd love to ask you a bit about the technical breakthroughs that were made. Like as an example, solid-state batteries is something that we've been hearing about for years, but they haven't really taken off. I'd love to understand from your perspective, what have you done that will allow you now to make these drastic changes in form factor for the batteries, and what's the underlying technology there?
Yes, so we come out from research. So originally we researched and developed solid state batteries more as a model system. So we had full working solid state batteries. They were very, very tiny, very small. They were operational, but they really the idea was to understand batteries in general as a model system, to look at interfaces. But then we also realized, okay, but they actually work quite well and they are fully solid, whereas the whole industry is looking for a fully solid state battery. And most of them actually still use a bit of liquid inside of their cells. And this was one of the first realization where we said, okay, can we not make this into a product itself rather than only a model system? And then we looked more into the manufacturing process, which is also something in the battery industry what's often seen as not economically scalable, which is wrong because it's used in many different other industries already at a huge scale and almost fully automated. So this really gave us the opportunity. We saw how it works. We also see there's a bit of a misconception in the market, and we see the need in the market. And all of this, in a way, came together. And then Abdesalem Maribia, who was a PhD student back then, and me as a scientist, we came together and said, okay, we need to scale this and to make this into a manufactured product.
Michael and Mo, do you consider this a technological bet or a scalability bet on the industrialization of the existing technology, but it just needs to be done in a way that hasn't been done before? Where do you see the risk of this investment, so to say?
If I had to jump in here, I would say the risk of the investment really is, I mean, on a brutal honesty sense, is can Moritz and Abby achieve the goals that they've told us about, right? From an investor perspective. And the reason we backed them is that they have showcased to us that they're able to do that. And since our investment, I can tell you, I'm very happy to see just the development. I mean, I'm smiling here because Moritz knows exactly what's going on. Like this product, this technology has really come into a market that has changed an environment where others just thought wasn't possible. So as you said, like, or as Moritz said, like solid state batteries were always seen as sort of this later stage development. But the reality is actually it works now. It's happening now, and scaling them, while people have imagined or have rightly stated that it is hard, it is brutally hard. But we are in a position now where we are looking to bet that battery, in this case, can achieve what others have said was not possible. And they're doing that very effectively.
Michael, I'd love to ask you, you've invested in the industrial space for a long time. What have that taught you about scalability of production and what it requires from the founding team? What are the key lessons you've learned through your investment career doing this work?
First of all, like technical feasibility and production at scale are two completely different things in a way. So we're seeing many founders or to be founders, many scientists that have great products that work in a lab, or great technology that works in a lab. But then it's still a completely different thing to produce them at scale. So what we're doing is like really always with an investment, even if you think technology works, everything is great, always think the design, the production, the delivery process already while designing the product. And that's also something we really liked at Battery, that they had a very clear kind of idea or already first steps in how they're going to achieve mass production, why it makes sense, who's going to do it. And it's like as important as the technology itself. And the world is full with kind of great technology that has never achieved scale because of the production term. And there's this famous quote of production hell from a very successful entrepreneur that shows you just like how hard it is to go at scale. But maybe also Moritz wants to elaborate a little bit more on that and how he tackles that and how he thinks about it, because it was also one of the things that we heard, like, how can you invest in a battery and are you going to produce it and does it make any sense?
Yeah, Moritz, I think you should go ahead on that. And I think, Michael, you teed it up. I'm sure you referred to Elon Musk just before, that he is super well known for saying the hard thing is not the technology. The hard thing is being able to produce at scale and build a manufacturing line that actually functions at the level that's needed to become a world dominant company.
Oh, definitely. I think also the scientific paper or the first lab results, it's really just the starting point. And that was exactly also for us. We worked in the lab and we had see them working. And since we started the company, we spent most of our time on scaling this and to making this into a scalable product. And our approach here was to always partner with manufacturing companies, with machine producing companies who have done similar things before, not for batteries, but for other applications, and to go there and to learn from them and to scale this together without first buying an equipment, which we see many hardware startups do, that they often immediately jump into purchasing equipment, and we ourselves often were tempted of buying equipment. Usually it comes up every other month that we think we now need it, but then we figure a way out. Actually, we can find a way around it, and we first test and rent, and until we are really there and we know, okay, this is the system, this works, and we have even proven that it works, not only with ourselves but also our customers. So our way is really iterating step by step, going to larger machines. We've produced so far 5 different machines, and the next one is already next month, which gives us a lot of know-how on how to industrialize these processes. And then on the same time, of course, partner with people which we don't want to develop everything. We want to develop the core of our technology, which is the battery, but there's a lot of know-how around it, especially in Europe. There's a lot of know-how on flexible electronics, which we can tap into and here partner and go much faster like that and building the first products.
Maybe for the audience that are deep tech founders that are crunching away at hard problems that do oftentimes require close partnerships with corporate partners, can you talk a bit about your key learnings from setting up those partnerships and navigating it? There are a lot of founders that break their neck on corporates that signal one thing and end up doing something else.
I think the most important step is going there and testing it and running it yourself, being there on the side and trying to understand the systems. You can talk a lot about systems, you can plan a lot beforehand, but you really only understand it once you're there. You bring your materials, you bring your processes, and actually run the system and understand it. Only then you can really validate, is this a system which works for us or not?
Is that both in terms of the technical side, but also the partnership potential, the trust that you have with a partner, meaning that you got to go there as the founders, you've got to spend real time and be really close to that other partner to be able to. Can you talk a bit how you manage those relationships and what gives you trust and what has made you back out of some relationships?
So indeed, we try to be there. We try to be there on site always, and we've seen that this is different how other companies sometimes approach it, in a way that even people on site were surprised. We rent a system for 2 weeks, we do a campaign, and then we told them, yeah, but we will be there the whole 2 weeks. And they were first a bit surprised because normally people don't do this, but this is very key. You build up a relationship, you build up a trust, which also led that much more people from there that also came to the site, and then you can actually talk and then develop a partnership and try to understand what they can, what they're capable of, what they're maybe not capable of, and then really find a way together here.
Michael and Mo, I want to ask you a question from the investor perspective. I've spoken to a bunch of deep tech investors about batteries over time, and quite a few of them have said, I'm never going to do batteries in Europe because we're just way behind China, especially. And for that reason, like, we just do not have the ecosystem. Even if I met a founder who's doing incredible stuff, I wouldn't dare make that bet. Can you talk about what convinced you that this is doable?
I think It's a very interesting point, but ultimately, as European investors, we can't keep always imagining that China is going to be the solution to everything, right? Like, we have to put our eggs in a basket that we believe in, and we believe that Europe can achieve what, in this case, China has achieved in some capacity in the beginning. And to do that, we need to back those companies. When we look at it from what exactly, when you see battery, again, just making it clear, is that it's a shift into a new design primitive or paradigm, if I was to put it into words. So really going ultra thin, flexible, and embedded directly into products that enable form factors. So the question isn't more about what battery do I choose, rather it's what product can I build with a battery that is adjustable to my design. So that's really the goal for me. It's Europe has the ability, Europe has the capability. And if we bring it sort of in terms of supply chain, then yes, absolutely, we have to be sort of globalized in that respect. But we should always give the point that Europe has been able to showcase its industrial ability historically. And still today, Europe is very capable of achieving its own independence, quote unquote, in this market.
Is the point here that because there's sufficient innovation in the form factor and in the decisions made by the founding team here in terms of what they're going for, that means that Moritz and team are not fighting against the behemoths in China, so to say, and for that reason you're really not competing on just who's best, but you're also competing on what are you doing, what are you trying to achieve, and there's no one else who's going this path. Michael, maybe you can comment a bit on what made you say that this bet is a safe bet, as safe as anything is in seed.
Well, nothing is safe. There are, and I actually hate the word safe bets because they often turn out to be the most risky ones and that don't work. Yeah, the worst ones. So, with China, it's like there's always a reason you can point to a larger entity, be it a country or be it also a company, like what if OpenAI does it? What if Google does it? With that, you can kill every investment, every single decision. I think the difference here is a little bit was mentioned. It's not just a better kind of car battery. It's a completely new category that doesn't exist. It's creating a new platform that doesn't exist for products in many ways that don't exist. Think if you're really cool stuff, you can suddenly do smart skin tattoos. Theoretically, you can do paper thin environmental stickers. You can do true everyday AR glasses that feel like a normal super thin kind of glass. You can do insect-sized long endurance drones, self-powered smart labels for a long time. So there are a lot of products that today don't exist. If you're inventing and creating a completely new category, then that's a bet we are willing to take. But the threshold is super high, and we have probably looked at dozens and hundreds of battery companies just in Europe, and then many more outside of Europe, where we decline for many different reasons. And sometimes it is that we say, look, it's a nice improvement, but it's just a tiny improvement, and we don't think it's enough to compete then against the, let's say, industrial kind of complex of China or other things. But here we just were torn away and blown away by the innovation potential and this potentially new category.
Maybe I can just close with a statement that I think is also important here, is that, as mentioned previously, sort of the innovation on the chemistry side has been there and is continuing to be there. But if you look at it from a world that is product driven, battery just opens this opportunity for just having product that is at present not there. So we really are loving that idea. And ultimately, the outcome is going to be determined by their ability to showcase this. So really, product is driving a lot of the innovation.
Moritz, maybe you can talk a bit to how you're thinking about building a company that even at scale has a solid and healthy supply chain in a space that's notoriously impacted by what as an example, right now is going on in Iran and the Hormuz Strait.
Mm-hmm. Maybe before that, I would like to do a quick shout out to Mo and the whole Redstone team, because we actually started fundraising last year, shortly before Northvolt went insolvent, which made a huge wave in the whole investor scene. And the nice thing about Redstone here was to look beyond this news, the short-term news, but really think about long-term. This was not so much a discussion as with many others, which I had the discussion. So really here the long view, which was very, very impressive, I think. And then for the supply chain.
And honestly, I do think that there are flowers worth giving there, Michael and Mo. I think it's so important that we have people like yourselves at the Redstone team that are truly contrarian and truly ready to make the bet irrespective of something else that everyone in media is talking about. Everyone in the industry is kind of, I think, drawing a lot of wrong conclusions on the basis of, and saying this has nothing to do with Moritz and team.
Yes, and exactly as Michael said, we are not aiming to go head on with traditional lithium-ion batteries, and we're really trying to develop a new category of batteries for new applications. But then you had a question on supply chain. Well, our strategy right now is to diversify the risk a bit. So we have supply chain within China, we have supply chain without China. We have one of our key materials comes from Europe right now, for example. So we really we need to think global here, and we need to diversify to have this covered in the risk portfolio, because there are always regulations with changes. And then for short-term changes, usually we can plan ahead for this. If we have a material, it lasts us for a very long time, and we just need to plan ahead to order it very much in the front. So far, this has not been a big issue for us. Of course, it will be more issue once we have regularly running large-scale productions.
Michael, I'd love to ask you to take us towards the end of this by just letting everyone in the audience, or make it super clear to the audience how this investment reflects the ethos at Redstone.
What we always at Redstone like to have is a very clear own opinion and conviction. So no matter if we lead, co-lead, or if we just participate, we nearly never do follow the crowd. And because A has invested, we also invest. And we really try very specifically to go on the contrarian side. So we look where is the majority of people going, and then what are probably areas that are currently overlooked. A little bit like 2021, everybody was going consumer apps. We said, let's stay away from that. What are other areas that we believe and have a strong conviction long-term, which was deep tech. And that's one of the, and in that sense, battery is one of these typical bets that we at Redstone would do. Very contrarian at the time, with a potential huge outcome in the long term. And we love to back these founders and enable that and help them to support and to fulfill their dreams.
Moritz, I want to close by giving you the opportunity to talk to the people that are listening in, especially, I would say in this case, maybe the large corporates that I'm sure are tuning in, because we've got a show that's fully dedicated to corporate innovation departments. And I imagine that those could be very valuable to you.
We talk to many different corporates. And the interesting part here is sometimes they themselves don't know really where the problem is, where the limitations is. So here it is really interesting to see, look a bit at the supply, look a bit at the devices which are currently not possible. There's much more out there which can be enabled with technology, and we are right here. So we can work here together and really develop full new product categories within Europe, within the European ecosystem.
Let me ask the three of you. I want to hear from each of you. What's the use case, the product that will be enabled by battery that you're most excited about? Whether it's something that's around the corner or someone working on it right now, or just an absolute dream of yours.
There are many different applications. I'm very excited about all the wearables. There's a lot of wearables now coming out. They're getting smarter and smarter. They're more and more limited. We talked to a lot of these companies buy the batteries, and I think there's a lot of potential on that. And the other thing is enabled embedded sensors that we could have a world where we get data from all around us, located at a central hub, and make everything much more intelligent. I think this is something where I really look forward to.
I think Moritz covered it in a sort of holistic view, but if I had to be explicit, I mentioned it in passing in the beginning, but I have this ideal that, everyone wears a smartwatch, an app that is basically tracking their day-to-day health and also their achievements with regards to that improvement. But imagine there was a world where you had a washable item of clothing that was backed by a sensor that is able to achieve sort of the same output that a smart device would have given you. And you just never have to worry about, you just wear the piece of clothing and you go about your day. I think for me, that's sort of something I really like to think about, just because I do enjoy sport. And it's always an issue for me to always think about, okay, I have to wear this. I just want a piece of clothing that does it for me.
In general, I'm most excited about the whole medical devices category, where currently batteries and size is a huge constraint factor on a very more concrete level. And on a high level, I'm excited about, because in 5 or maybe 10 years, hardware products won't brag about battery life. They will just actually make the battery disappear, and it will focus on functionality and what it can do.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful place to close. Michael, Mo, and Moritz, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast again. I think you're all doing important and really incredible work. When I look to you, Mo, or Moritz, sorry, it's incredible what you've been able to do so far, and I think we're going to see much more from you. Thank you, guys.